It is Tuesday, January the 3rd. Hope everybody had a nice new year. I know I did. Back in the saddle now with some more NBA action. We were last with you on Thursday. I believe that was the 29th. We did hit all three of our games that day, so this NBA season continues to treat us well. We hope to keep it going tonight. Three more games I'll be involved in. Let's get to them now quickly, starting in Philadelphia, where the 76ers host the Minnesota Timberwolves. Minnesota, a 4.5-point favorite at BetSafe. 204.5, the total in this game. Now the T-Wolves, a disappointing 11-23 on the season, but they are starting to play a little bit better here over these past 2 or 3 weeks, 5-5 in their last 10 games. They're really developing into a good offensive team. Andrew Wiggins, Zach LaVine, Karl Anthony Towns, all averaging over 20 points per game. Really it's been the defensive end where these T-Wolves have struggled, and that's a little bit of a surprise considering their coach is Tom Thibodeau, known as one of the NBA's best defensive tacticians. We're starting to see some of Thibodeau's influence rub off here. We mentioned the T-Wolves 5-5 in their last 10. That's a pretty good stretch for an 11-23 team. Well, in those last 10 games, they've held 5 opponents below 100 points. And tonight they'll be facing the very worst offensive team in the NBA, the 76ers, last in the league in offensive efficiency, averaging just 99.1 points per 100 possessions. They're also 27th in field goal percentage, shooting just 43.6% from the floor. You know, this really isn't a good matchup for the Sixers because they don't have anybody who can check Andrew Wiggins on the wing. And Joel Embiid, their great young big man, he won't be able to control the paint tonight the way he sometimes does. That's because Minnesota has a great young big man of their own in Karl Anthony Towns. That matchup, Anthony Towns and Joel Embiid, will be very interesting to watch tonight. Those two should be going at it for the next 10 to 15 years in the NBA. Two real talents. But again, this not a great matchup for the Sixers. They really struggle scoring the ball. As we mentioned, they don't have anybody who can deal with Andrew Wiggins. As we saw on November 17th, the last time these teams met, a 110-86 win for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Wiggins with 35 points in that game. Not sure the T-Wolves will win quite that big tonight, but I do like them to cover the 4.5-point number. I am on Minnesota there. Moving on now to Boston, where the Celtics host the Utah Jazz. Boston, a 6-point favorite at BetSafe, 200.5 the total on the year. Now the Celtics have been pretty good all in all. They do look like they're going to be, the third or fourth seed in the Eastern Conference playoffs. I know we still have a long time to go until the postseason, but the Celtics, a winning team, they will definitely be a playoff team in the East. However, they haven't been great at home, just 8-6 at home, and they really haven't been good against the NBA's better teams. Boston 0-9 against the top 7 teams in the NBA going by record, and Utah is one of those teams. The Jazz 22-13 on the year, 10-6 on the road. The Jazz, the very best defensive team in the NBA. They lead the league in both points allowed, surrendering just 94.7 points per game, and field goal percentage defense. They're allowing the opposition to shoot just 42.9%. Now, the Celtics normally a pretty balanced offensive team, but lately it has been all Isaiah Thomas. The diminutive point guard has been unstoppable over these past couple of weeks, poured in 52 points in the Celtics' last game. That was a win over the Miami Heat. Now, as we mentioned, the Jazz, the best defensive team in the NBA, and they will tonight have back George Hill, their point guard. Hill has only played 13 games this season. He's missed most of his games with a lower leg injury, but missed the team's last game, a win over Phoenix, with concussion symptoms. But as we said, Hill should be back in the lineup tonight. That is key for the Jazz. He's important for them on both ends, but especially on the defensive end, and he will be tasked with slowing down Isaiah Thomas tonight. Now, we mentioned the Jazz, terrific defensively. They've held their last 3 opponents below 90 points. That is 14 times this season they've held the opposition below 90 points. That leads the NBA. And the Celtics have really been struggling defensively here over these past couple of weeks. Boston, starting out the season, was a good defensive team, but you look at their last 7 games, they're allowing 111.8 points per game over their last 7. To put that in perspective, only the Phoenix Suns and Brooklyn Nets allowing more than that for the season. So the Celtics have not been defending lately. We mentioned just 0-9 against the NBA's top 7 teams. I mean, they might be able to beat the Jazz tonight. You can be sure that Brad Stevens has mentioned that 0-9 stat to them a few times. But to me, 6 points, that is a lot of points here to be giving a Utah team that really specializes in close, low-scoring games. So I think the Jazz, a good-looking bet here as a 6-point underdog in Boston. Moving on now, final game I'll be involved in on this Tuesday, January the 3rd. What about the Indiana Pacers going into Detroit to face the Pistons? Detroit, a 4-point favorite at BetSafe, 202.5 the total here. Now the Pistons have really been struggling lately. They had lost 7 of 8 games before beating the Miami Heat on Sunday, but they were behind in Miami on Sunday, and the Heat were without 5 rotation players, including center Hassan Whiteside. So they were really playing their B team. And as we said, Detroit, they allowed over 60 points to that Heat team in the first half before coming back to win in the second half. Now the Pacers have been a bit disappointing themselves, 17 and 18 on the year, just 4 and 13 on the road, but they have won their last 2 games over the Bulls and the Magic. And you know what? I think this is a good matchup for them. Now, they did beat Detroit just a couple of weeks ago, 105-90. We saw in that game Paul George with 26 points. George, of course, the Pacers' best player. And Detroit really doesn't have anybody who can match up with George. Their starting small forward, Tobias Harris, is too slow for Paul George. And their starting 2 guard, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, too small for George. So this is a tough matchup for the Detroit Pistons. Look, obviously Detroit has the edge inside with Andre Drummond, but Miles Turner should be able to really give him a fight here. The Pacers have been a bit better since they replaced Monte Ellis with Glenn Robinson III in the starting lineup. Ellis is back now, but coming off the bench, giving them some offensive pop off the bench. Like we said, Detroit, really not a very good offensive team, 27th in the NBA in points scored, averaging just 98.8 points per game. Not a whole lot of people on that roster who can create their own offense. I just think the Pacers are a little bit better. I know this game is in Detroit, and the Pacers haven't been good on the road this season. But the 4 points here, Detroit favored by 4, those could come in handy. Like we said, the Pistons not very good on the offensive end. So I think Indiana +4, a good-looking bet tonight. I am on the Pacers there. There you have it, folks. Those are my thoughts for this Tuesday, January the 3rd. I like the Minnesota Timberwolves -4.5 in Philadelphia. I like the Utah Jazz +6 in Boston. And I like the Indiana Pacers to keep it close. I like them +4 in Detroit. There you have it, folks. Those are my thoughts on this Tuesday, January the 3rd. I wish you the best of luck no matter what you decide to do tonight, just so long as your interests don't conflict with my interests. Enjoy the games, folks.